We welcome on our Browns analyst, Nathan Zegura. Of course, we usually talk to him Mondays at 4:40. Today, he's joining us at 5. Nathan, welcome to the show, bud.
Thanks, guys. Good to be with you as always.
Well, it's always great to have you. I guess we'll start at the very logical place, the beginning. What do you owe yesterday's loss to the New York Jets to?
Obviously, it's a lot of things, but I think the easy one to jump right into is you give up 2 kick return touchdowns, 1 kickoff, 1 punt return touchdown. There was a point in this game where the Jets had as many touchdowns as they had yards of offense. 2 touchdowns, 2 total yards of offense, and so that's a big one. You just take those off the board, right? The Browns would then win this game, but it's a lot of things. It's unfortunately, not enough still from the offensive side of the football. It was good to see Jerry Jeudy get involved. I thought Dillon Gabriel made some good throws at times. Obviously missed some throws. The throw back to Malachi Corley, I think, could have been a huge play for the Browns in that game. Not enough room for Quinshon Judkins. But the thing that jumps out to me in this game is through 3 quarters, the Jets had 1 possession that netted them a first down, and that led to a field goal in the second quarter. That was it. And so this is a game that should have been over. The Browns defense had a bunch of 3-and-outs. They had an interception on a 1-play drive, Justin Fields' first interception of the year when Rocket Hickman got him. This game should have been over well before the fourth quarter, well before we get into even talking about, the holding on a play where it was pretty likely they weren't going to throw the football, jumping off sides when everybody knew they weren't going to run the play. Those lack of discipline things there that, cost the Browns a chance to get back in this game. But yeah, it's a lot of things. Unfortunately, this is a team that, 10 penalties, the 2 things on special teams, just too many mistakes to overcome and not enough explosiveness on offense to overcome those shortcomings. And the defense, again, I think overall, you'd say the D played very well in this game. Unfortunately, it's a 3-phase game, and the Browns were not good enough on offense, and they were certainly not good enough on special teams. They lost a game in which the opposing quarterback, Justin Fields, completed just 2 passes that went past the line of scrimmage on 5 attempts that netted 7 yards. He also threw an interception on one of his passes past the line. He attempted 5 passes past the line of scrimmage, completed 2 for 7 yards, and the Browns couldn't win.
Yeah, I mean, they had -5 total passing yards at the half. So we'll stick to the positives for a second, and then we'll get into some more parts of the game. But I thought this was Mason Graham's best game of the season, Nathan.
Yeah, Mason Graham looked very good, disruptive, 3 pressures on the day, quick pressures. You can't say enough about what he did in this one, and you can't say enough about Carson Schlesinger coming back from that high ankle sprain to play, get himself a half of a sack, making tackles all over the field. Yeah, those 2 young rookies looked very good. Schlesinger's been good, I think, all year. This was a good game for Mason Graham, and what you need to see it turn into is more some of those impactful plays behind the line of scrimmage. But the fact that he was getting there fairly consistently in this game, you saw his ability to get penetration. He had a real nice swim move, at a good rip. That was encouraging to see for Mason Graham, the 5th overall pick.
Nathan, what'd you think of Dillon Gabriel's 5th start here in Cleveland?
Some good, some bad. I think, unfortunately, still kind of a lot of the same. I liked, obviously, the touchdown after the Ronnie Hickman interception, and I thought it was a great job by Tommy Reese. Go for it real quick there in that, sudden change situation where you're kind of in that range where you can get the ball into the end zone. He makes a nice throw out there. It was in the air for a while, and a lot of people are talking about that. But, he gave Jerry Jeudy a chance, and that's what you do when you got playmakers. You give him a chance in a one-on-one. It was underthrown, which allowed Jerry Jeudy to come back and get the touchdown. I thought some of that was good, but then there were still some of the inaccurate throws. The one in the ground to Jerry Jeudy, the one to Malachi Corley where they had a perfectly designed play set up that I thought was really, really good and was going to go for, when you watch it back, was going to go for maybe a touchdown. If not, it was going to be a big chunk and certainly get you inside of scoring range on that drive that he missed there. He had the one, he got very lucky that was behind Cedric Tillman, that they dropped the interception. So some good, some bad. I thought he did a good job with his legs. I mean, he had more running yards in this game than the Jets had net passing yards. He was over 50 yards rushing. They had 42 passing. So there were some things I thought that you could like about Dillon, but too many sacks. And then you go back to that 4th and 1 where there was a lot, to kind of dissect in that play. You got Quinshon lined up in a wing. They know it's going to be a pass play with Jeudy in the backfield. Gabriel, I thought if he looked right, had a couple options, clearly was looking at Jeudy to get that win there. The Jets were ready for it. And that turns into a sack. Still taking too many sacks there. They had 6 in this game. This is a team, that had 11 sacks coming into the game. Will McDonald had more sacks in this game than he had in the season. coming into it. So still a lot to clean up. They're still not explosive enough and not enough points on the scoreboard, given that, for a while there, the Jets weren't playing offense.
Yeah, you mentioned Will McDonald. I think he had 4 sacks total, and it's like he turned into Myles Garrett. But even still, the pressures, Nathan, 25 total pressures by the Jets defense is just it's just an absurd number.
Yeah, Browns, and in this game, both the tackles struggled. Jack Conklin and Cam Robinson. You go back to the opening play of the game. It was a nice run from Quinshon Judkins, who still, I think the Browns are struggling to find him enough room to run the football, because when he gets a crease, it's like he picks up 9, 10, and we know he's got the ability to hit those chunk runs. But, tough game for the tackles. A lot of those pressures did come off the edge from Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson on the other side. They combined for 5 sacks, and I think around 14 pressures came off of the edge there in this game.
Nathan, obviously fans want their pound of flesh at 2-7. And today, Kevin Stefanski standing by Bubba Ventrone in the special teams unit. He's standing by, Cameron Thomas for the snafu we saw there. He's standing by Dillon Gabriel through these 5 games. So obviously that's the easy way for us to spark something, is big change. So if you're Kevin Stefanski, how do you keep this thing on the tracks now that you're 2-7? Going into a Baltimore game that some fans are having a tough time seeing positives going into?
Yeah, and it is tough. You're 2-7, and, the games have somewhat, unfortunately, of a bit of a familiar feel at times in terms of how they go offensively. Defensively, it's usually the defense has been good for half, 3 quarters. At home, they've been good for 4 quarters, but at some point they get worn down, and then special teams has unfortunately not been special for the majority of the season. So it is tough. I understand, that people were looking for change coming out of that game, because I think it was such a difficult loss to stomach for a variety of reasons. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, Kevin Stefanski's in charge. He's the head coach, and he's saying he's got belief in the guys. He's saying that, they're obviously committed to getting better, and they've got to do it, because right now, you as a Browns team, you do have issues with, I would call, execution on a consistent basis, and it's got to go back to everybody needs to look in the mirror and do their job. You look at a lot of these offensive plays, one guy doesn't do their job, and that ends up killing the play. Or whether on special teams, one guy is out of the correct lane and in the wrong lane, and all of a sudden you get these kick returns. From a special team standpoint, in the league, there have been 19 either blocked punts, punt return touchdowns, or kick return touchdowns this season across the league. And the Browns, unfortunately, have been on the wrong side of 4 of them. So 4 out of 19. That is an astronomical number, 21%. So that has got to get cleaned up. And you appreciate the patience, but the results have to change. The results have to change, because right now the Browns, in the way that it is going, obviously we know it's not good. They always say you are what you reckon it is. 2-7 is not good.
Yeah, Andrew, I was listening to, Nathan, I was listening to you and Andrew yesterday on the broadcast, and the neutral zone infraction play, you guys are setting this up, and you're talking about the time you're going to get the ball back, and then you're doing a great job of painting the picture and being like, all right, here's what you can't do right now. And then I think at one point you'd even mentioned something about how Kevin Stefanski is saying they're not calling a play, and then you get the neutral zone infraction. Some fans get mad at coaches in that moment, but I don't know what else Kevin could have done in that spot.
There's nothing that he could have done. That's what I'm saying. It comes down to execution. And at the end of the day, you've got to understand the situation. And I said, they are not going to run a play. So the only things you can't do here is jump off sides. There's no way they're running a play 4th and 5 at midfield under those circumstances. They clearly didn't even trust Justin Fields to throw the football. They ran on a 3rd and goal from the 11, a quarterback draw. On the play where he rolled out, and unfortunately Devin Bush got the hold. We had Jeremy Rucker double covered. He wasn't throwing that ball. I guarantee they told him in that huddle, you're going to roll out right. If the Browns fall down on defense and there's nobody within 20 yards, you can throw it. Otherwise, you're going to slide. You're going to make them use a timeout. And you give them a first down there. But that one, it's inexplicable. It really is. It is inexplicable. And I think you could hear both Andrew Siciliano and I, are shocked at what happened, and also the realization that ends the game. Now, the Browns would have had a long way to go and under very difficult circumstances to go the length of the field, but at least you were still in the game. And to have a mental mistake like that, or a mental lapse in that critical of a moment, it's not great. Kevin Stefanski was shouting, I saw it on the TV copy after the fact, don't jump. They're not running a play. Don't jump. Don't jump. And then the players do it. So, it reminds me of, I remember when Joe Woods first came to the Browns, he and I were talking, I grew up in the Bay Area. I was a 49ers fan growing up. In the Super Bowl, if you remember when the Niners lost the Chiefs with a couple of years ago, not the most recent one, 2 times ago, there was a 3rd and 17. That game was basically over, and they ended up completing a bomb that Tyreek Hill did the Kansas City Chiefs. And at the time, people were like, how could you let that happen? How could you let that happen? And I remember Joe Woods was telling me that play, they knew this was a play that they would put Tyreek Hill in the slot in a 3-by-1. They had 2 guys clear out, and he would look like he was running all 3 kind of verticals, going left to right, and then he would break it back to the right. They knew the play was coming. They drilled it in practice over and over and over. They say basically before the play gets called in the huddle, remember, they're going to run this. Don't bite on the dig. Don't take that eye candy. If you're the safety, they're going to try to get you, and then they're going to get Tyreek Hill back to the left. So as a coach, you've drilled it, right? You've prepared them for it every day in practice. As the play call comes in, you even remind them, hey, this is what's going to happen. And then guess what happens? They bid on the dig. They throw it to Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs go on to win the Super Bowl. So you do have sympathy at times for coaches in those situations, because obviously they're not coached to jump all sides there. But there has to be, and that gets to what are the ramifications of it. You said people want their pound of flesh. There's got to be some accountability, unfortunately, because that did happen. And it's unfortunate because it rounds up an opportunity to try to get back into that game.
Maybe they heard jump. Right? It's a loud environment. You don't jump. You just don't hear the don't. This happens all the time in my house. My kids will only hear one of the 3 words I say, and it's the word I don't want them to do. So I was just thinking out loud there. Nathan, we appreciate you, buddy. Great stuff. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Nathan.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Browns analyst Nathan Zegura there on the Fan Hotline.